I'm going to go ahead and get us started. As usual, feel free to put your name and where you're joining us from in the chat. We love to get a sense of where our community is. Thank you so much for making the time to be here today. We'll have time to hear from folks on our U.S. team for the first half hour, 35 minutes, and then we'll have some time for questions. So feel free to put those questions in the chat at any time. We love to hear from you. Something might come up as we're talking, so you can put that in the chat at any time, and we'll monitor that and get to your questions at the end. Everyone is muted, and so if you want to engage with us, you can go ahead and put that in the chat. All right, so again, I'm Anna. I am our Director of Advancement at Nonviolent Peaceforce and usually get to be with you during these cafes. And at the end of last year, we actually gathered together for our Nonviolence Cafe, and we reflected on really a terrible year we had for human rights and peace. And we just recently released a protection trends report for the last year, and we noted there that in 2025, civilians across conflict-affected contexts faced a stark and increasingly familiar reality. Violence is no longer confined to battlefields, and protection can no longer be assumed, not in homes, not along displacement routes, and not even in places designed to offer refuge. So in that cafe at the end of last year, we heard that reality, and we also heard stories of hope from Ukraine, South Sudan, and the Middle East. Stories that prove, despite the headlines and geopolitics, local communities are still keeping people safe and cultivating peace. Today in our cafe, we're going to focus on the United States, and we feel those same themes here in this country. In our recently published U.S. brief, we wrote, political violence in the United States has been notably increasing since 2016 and is now at the highest level in over 50 years. So we're experiencing increasingly combative tactics by federal agencies and attacks on local communities and officials. For me, I live in Minneapolis, and after a year that saw a horrific political assassination and a shocking school shooting, over 2,000 federal agents from U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement and Customs and Border Patrol descended. We had tear gas routinely in our streets, our neighbors were killed, and we grieved community members who were taken from their homes and sent to detention centers. And at the same time, we experienced a wellspring of nonviolent movements and actions to counter violence and authoritarianism. People connected through signal chats, providing rides, patrolling neighborhoods, protesting. We built on decades of organizing to take on the mantle of nonviolence with a fierce commitment to human rights and keeping people safe. And what happened in Minnesota is replicated across the country. We're all experiencing this in our communities. There's increased violence and authoritarianism, and there's also our communities are meeting this violence and authoritarianism with nonviolent resistance and peaceful defense. So in this moment, NP's team in the United States is really taking a national approach and doing all we can to share tools like de-escalation, early warning, early response, upstander intervention to ensure neighbors and those trying to protect them can do so as safely as possible. The tools of unarmed civilian protection prepare us for whatever violence we may confront and make it possible to protect our community. So today we're joined by U.S. Program Manager Ethan Quezada, Program Coordinator Jules Dela Fuente, and our Head of Mission, Roz Lee. They're going to share with you how we're putting your support to work to keep people safe. So first, we're going to turn to Ethan, who works as our program manager, and he's based out of San Diego, California. So Ethan, can you set the scene for us a little bit? Tell us about what safety risks are present in the communities we work with in San Diego, and how have communities been responding to those threats?
Well, thanks, Anna. Hey, everyone. My name is Ethan Quezada. I'm the program manager here in San Diego. San Diego is first and foremost, it's home to the largest land border crossing in the world. I mean, I could hop on a bus right now and get to the border within a half hour. And I think this really points to two truths. One, San Diego has always been a place of immigrants and movement. And two, San Diego is a place of uniquely successful state building. The American military industrial complex is part of the fabric of society here. When you go to the bay, you can see huge warships coming in for repairs. Around every corner is another war memorial or weapon system manufacturer. And sometimes at night, just right outside my window, I can even hear the sound of shelling in the distance from Marines practicing their artillery at Camp Pendleton, further north. Because we are within 100 miles of the border at such a critical crossing, the Border Patrol has had a heavy presence here for decades. And by the way, the Border Patrol and ICE are not the same thing. Although they are both major violators of human rights in this moment, Border Patrol has a well-known track record for its paramilitary culture, aggressive and discriminatory enforcement style, and for having had near complete impunity for the countless murders, beatings, and abuses they've committed over the years. I think, according to the ACLU, no agent has ever been convicted of criminal wrongdoing while on duty, despite those deaths being documented, the use of excessive force during arrests, and inadequate medical care, and deaths at the Border Patrol, in Border Patrol custody. State violence and repression, particularly of the kind that many communities are experiencing, maybe for the first time in the United States, have been a part of the fight in San Diego for decades. What this means, in part, is that society here has, in many ways, kind of accepted the conditions of state power and repression. Sometimes San Diego can be a very head down, eyes forward kind of place. But it also means that there is a very deep and very experienced front line here. Some organizers have been at this for over 20 years, building up their skills, building up the body of work. And additionally, there is truly an incredible resilience and drive and fire to the youth organizing that I've been seeing on the ground as well. That being said, this conflict is still very much escalating to a devastating level. Detention centers like Otay Mesa are continuously the sites of neglect, abuse, and death. And they're administered to exact a level of suffering that is designed to force detained loved ones to self-deport. Border Patrol and ICE regularly roam the streets, and it's so sinister here because it seems like they've iterated on the design of their enforcement to fly just under the national radar. By focusing on and conducting smaller, more spread out operations kind of deep into the suburbs, which is a tactic they've been using in Minnesota following the quote unquote end of Operation Metro Surge. So yeah, the whole community is feeling the impacts of the fear that this has caused. I mean, rent's going unpaid, food insecurity is intensifying, mental health is honestly deteriorating because of such prolonged exposure to trauma and fear, and community infrastructure to deal with these issues is immensely, immensely strained. Activists in San Diego are being surveilled by the federal government and put on watch lists under an operation called Operation Road Flare, which, by the way, was just uncovered last month. And the city of San Diego just renewed a contract with Flock surveillance systems to utilize advanced surveillance technology in our streets. This is a huge concern for us because Flock does not adequately protect its data from being used by federal immigration enforcement agencies. And it gets used as well by local PD to surveil and repress civic space that's already been shrinking. Just a couple weeks ago, even, some organizers who have been in a federal courthouse protecting constitutional and human rights for nearly a year were detained and cited just for being there. So the situation is heavy, but just like Minneapolis in the winter, San Diego organizers don't quit. Patrol groups are expanding their coverage, developing their resources and outreach strategies to reach more languages, more zip codes, and more businesses. Mutual aid networks are seemingly springing up out of the ground to meet people's most desperate needs while reinforcing that immigrants belong. And rapid response groups are improving their trainings, coordinating, thinking deeply about how to address psychosocial protection needs. So everywhere you look, there's neighbors reminding us to be urgent, to be creative, and to be unwaveringly courageous.
Thanks, Ethan. Thanks for helping us have a little bit of a window into what's going on in the community where you are right now. So, you recently shared with me a story of what we technically call duty of care at Nonviolent Peaceforce. Can you share a little bit with us today and illustrate for us about the work we're doing in San Diego in response to the situation, and particularly a little bit about what duty of care is and how it's a form of protection?
Mhm. Well, duty of care is an organization like Nonviolent Peace Force's responsibility to protect the physical and psychosocial safety of those they're partnering with on the front line. I want to invite you, everyone, to imagine just for a second. You're an organizer, right? You've cared about these issues your whole life, but it was really in the last year that you decided, I'm going to do something about this. You start showing up to all the events and community conversations, joining up patrols and rapid response chats, and you're learning that this is a whole world, and it's exhausting, and it's a little bit scary. 3 months later, maybe you get invited to a meeting with a bunch of really cool, well-known organizations and leaders, and there's a new effort being proposed to do deep relational mutual aid work with folks whose loved ones have been deported. Of course, you volunteer because when the facilitator asked who was going to lead this effort, nobody raised their hand. After a couple of meetings with other organizers who eventually joined up, you wait for your team to be called on. And say maybe a week goes by and you finally get that phone call. A massive raid just hit your community, and Border Patrol snatched 15 people in an instant. And now it is your responsibility to go and be present with the families and be useful to them on what's probably the worst day of their lives. Let's say you show up and there's a small crowd of people, and at the center, there's a mom with 3 kids, all under the age of 5, and she's just staring straight ahead, somewhere really, really far away. From that visit, you don't get much, just a name and a phone number. You and your team reach out, and eventually you're able to schedule a visit so that you can learn more about how to support this family. And when you walk into that apartment, maybe a week later, you see the pictures on the wall, the little shoes all lined up neatly by the door. You smile at mom, her name's Maria, by the way, and you start asking some questions. From that point on, you're present. You find the family a lawyer and go to all the appointments. You arrange for grocery deliveries, advocate at the hospital when the kid gets sick. You visit dad in detention. You organize to make sure he has enough commissary to call home. You're a paralegal, a caretaker, a fundraiser, a therapist, a social worker, and a human rights defender. 6 months later, you're working with 30 families just like that. And some of those stories are starting to keep you up at night. You're committed to this work. That's not the question, but it is getting hard to hold on. That creeping feeling of danger that runs down your spine when you're 3 feet away from a man in a green uniform and a black face mask holding an assault rifle. The breathtaking pain of hearing a judge order for deportation again. Hearing kids crying at night because their dad is gone and they don't know why. And on top of that, you're just tired. You have a family of your own, bills to pay. You're trying to remember to appreciate life still and plan maybe like a friend's birthday party or something. You've got chronic pain and it's getting worse because you're all stressed out and sleep deprived. But you're going to keep going because despite all of that, you feel the deep, deep beauty and honor of serving your community in this moment. That's why at Nonviolent Peace Force, we take duty of care so seriously, because people on the front lines are at risk and are carrying the physical and emotional labor of protecting the most vulnerable of their community from state violence. As practitioners of unarmed civilian protection, it's our ethical and moral obligation to do what we can to help organizers stay resilient, healthy, and safe. What this looks like is constantly holding space for organizers to voice their support needs and then taking action. When the organizers I work with told me that they were worried about ICE infiltrating mutual aid chats and using that info to surveil families, we sat down and we co-created an information management system that implemented a need-to-know basis for information sharing. That means that if they didn't need that information to perform their role, they just didn't have access to it. And that's how we protect each other. When I observed that organizers were starting to get burned out, I leaned on some of the tools in Nonviolent Peaceforce's peer welfare program to incorporate psychosocial health into the organizing. Organizers organizers know about burnout. They know about secondhand trauma, but they don't always have the spaciousness to design and implement systems of support. So not only is it our responsibility to offer duty of care to those we're alongside on the ground, but it also genuinely just improves the quality and sustainability of frontline responses. This work is intimate and demanding and sometimes dangerous, and we need to respond accordingly. Um, I think duty of care is inextricable from unarmed civilian protection. It's become a core part of the impact that Nonviolent Peace Force has on the ground um, all over the world. And I think it really, for me, I've seen just the impact that it has, and it feels sometimes it feels to me like it's the least that we can do, especially as frontline organizers give everything to protect their neighbors.
Thanks so much, Ethan. Thank you for helping us understand what it's like for folks right now and how we can provide that support. And just, I know many of you have been following our work for a long time, and this duty of care that we technically call really developed for Nonviolent Peace Force in Ukraine, protecting the frontline protectors. And then when civil war broke out in Sudan, our Ukraine team was providing that kind of training and support on how to do that in Sudan. And now we also are utilizing that in the United States. And so it's a way that we can operate from that place of solidarity and interconnectedness around the world, right? And keeping people safe who are doing that work of protection. So we'll have more time for Ethan. If you have questions for Ethan, please feel free to be putting them in the chat. Right now, we're going to turn to Jules, who works with our team in New York City. So Nonviolent Peace Force has been working in New York City for over 5 years. Jules, can you tell us a little bit about what that work has looked like over the years and ways you've seen that work make a difference in the lives of community members?
Yes. Thanks, Anna, for passing it over. Yeah, hello, everyone. My name is Jules Dela Fuente. I use they, them pronouns, and I am a program coordinator for our New York City team. Yeah, as Anna stated, our New York City team has been working in New York for over 5 years. Our work here started in 2021 amidst an increase of anti-Asian violence, right? As many of us know, beginning in 2020 and 2021, the Asian communities of New York City experienced a really stark rise in anti-Asian violence that was fueled by xenophobic and racist rhetoric from the COVID-19 pandemic. These attacks especially targeted Asian women such as Michelle Go, Christina Yuna Lee, Vilma Kari, and countless others who either went underreported or never made the news. So in response to this increase in anti-Asian violence, Nonviolent Peace Force joined the Hope Against Hate grant in partnership with the Asian American Federation. The Asian American Federation is, I believe, the largest Asian serving organization in New York City. And we joined the Hope Against Hate grant really to support local Asian communities with building up systems of direct protection in their own neighborhoods. So as a result, our work over the past 5 years has really focused on two offerings. One, direct protection, and two, training and capacity strengthening with local organizers. An example of this work that we've been doing has been with one of our partner organizations in Sunset Park, Brooklyn, called Raising Health. Raising Health is a direct services organization. They provide really important social services like a weekly pantry and an annual health fair where people from the community can get vaccines and get checkups completely free of charge. Our work with Raising Health began with de-escalation and upstander intervention trainings because community members shared concerns about experiencing anti-Asian violence when they were on the bus, when they were on the train, or even just walking down the street. So during these de-escalation trainings, participants learned both verbal and physical de-escalation skills and also how to support someone who had just experienced a hate crime. In the past year, though, our work with Raising Health has shifted pretty clearly because of increased concerns about immigration enforcement in public spaces like Sunset Park, where they host their annual health fair. So our team has really been focusing on coordinating safety teams at Raising Health's community events. And because of our continued work with Raising Health, our partnership is now in a stage where we are collaborating with their own programs team to design an unarmed civilian protection training for their network of volunteers. Our goal for this training is to really build Raising Health's staff and volunteer capacity so they can coordinate their own protective presence at future community gatherings in Sunset Park. So our partnership with Raising Health is really just one amongst the Hope Against Hate grant. In the past 2 years alone, NP has trained about 7,800 people throughout New York City in unarmed civilian protection. And through this work, we have also partnered with about 32 different community organizations. And I believe this year we have about 19 active partnerships. Yeah, so with these organizations, we really are just continuing to work with them and continuing to learn about their evolving needs in their own communities.
Great. Thank you so much, Jules. It's wonderful to remember that history of how we've been able to be in deep relationship with these local community groups. And so now, how has the community shifted at all or changed with this increase in state violence we've been seeing? What's that partnership look like now?
Yeah. Yeah, so as I mentioned before, NP's work began in New York amidst, the anti-Asian violence, right? And while those needs still exist, over the past year, we've really seen a pretty dramatic shift in support needs toward immigration defense work. And as a result of that, our work has shifted based on what we're hearing from our community organizations, right? And what we're hearing their needs are. And what we've been hearing for the past year, at least, if not more, has been that they are asking for support and preparing for interactions with immigrations and customs enforcement, also known as ICE. So many of our partners under the Hope Against Hate grant provide direct services, just like Raising Health, as I had talked about. A lot of these direct services, of course, again, are food pantries, medical and health service providers, as well as also legal resources. And with immigration enforcement becoming increasingly violent and increasingly unpredictable, staff at these organizations are really, really worried about immigration agents showing up at community events in public spaces. They're worried about immigration enforcement showing up at workplaces looking for clients or even staff. And they're also just worried about immigration enforcement showing up in their own personal lives. And fortunately, we are in a moment in New York City where Know Your Rights resources are circulating very widely and are, for the most part, accessible. However, what our partners are asking for is something more, right? They're asking, how do I move from just knowing my rights to asserting and actually exercising those rights? How do I stay grounded in the face of really violent immigration enforcement and calm enough so that I can make decisions that keep myself and the people around me safe, right? And in response to all of those questions, Nonviolent Peaceforce has developed an immigration defense training. Our trainings begin by introducing core unarmed civilian protection skills, such as situational awareness and the OODA loop, which is a decision-making process. And these tools really help participants practice regulating their bodies, sharpening awareness, and really grounding themselves when they're under pressure and in a chaotic or violent situation. We call this the 4 Cs, staying cool, calm, collected, and connected. At the heart of our immigration defense trainings, though, is our simulation exercises. During these trainings, my colleagues and I act as immigration officers in different scenarios. Depending on the organization we're working with and what work they specifically do, we practice a few different scenarios like entering an organization's office looking for a client or showing up at a community event and just questioning people who are in line at a food pantry. Acting as an ICE officer, I will talk over the staff. I will ignore their questions, but ask them questions in return in a rapid fire way. Or I'll even get defensive if they pull out their phone to start recording. And this makes the situation as real as possible while also maintaining a safe and controlled environment. Whenever we end a scenario, we always take a collective deep breath to reground ourselves and say, you are in a safe space. I am not an ICE officer, and we really just bring the energy back to a solid baseline. During these simulations, the participants have a lot of different reactions. Some participants react by immediately like focusing and asking for a warrant or closing the door or pulling out their phone to start recording the interaction. We also have some participants who freeze up or just go silent as if they kind of want to disappear from the situation. And these are all very real and very valid reactions. The goal of this simulation is not to get it perfect. It's not to say, great job, A plus, you did great. The purpose is really for people to notice what reactions arise naturally and really understand, did I freeze up? Did I go into fight mode and things like that? And we encourage everyone to, again, notice what those reactions are and to practice responding from a place of steadiness rather than panic. After the role play, we close out that part of our training with a debrief, and we go through different questions like, how did that feel for you? What came up in your body? Did you notice something that someone else did? What certain aspects of behavior or actions might have activated you? Or was there anything that maybe grounded you in that moment? And the debrief and these questions that we ask are where the community really learns from each other, right? Not only on tactics that they use, but also on their internal responses. The role plays are intended for practice, right? To develop that muscle memory of how to respond so that these safety tools and these reactions are easier to draw upon if the situation happens in real life. Hopefully our participants never have to use these, right? But we do, as you know, we do say we prepare, we don't panic, right? And at the end of this training, we leave each participant with what we call a safety planning worksheet so that they can develop their own personal and organizational safety protocols, including identifying additional questions they have or resources they need, and ways that, they might seek out support. Luckily, we have participants who have come up to us at the end of the trainings and really told us, now I know what to do when ICE shows up, and I also know what I need to practice.
Thank you so much, Jules, for sharing with us a little bit about what unarmed civilian protection work has looked like, over the years, but then most recently with an increase in state violence. And I know I like to take it to heart, and it's helpful to hear over and over again how important that embodied practice is so that our muscle memory is ready to go if we ever do need it. So we're going to turn it over to Roz now. Roz is our head of mission to give us a bit of the big picture. Where does the U.S. work go from here?
Thanks, Anna. Greetings, everyone, and thanks to Jules and Ethan for sharing such real-time examples of the kind of work that we do at Nonviolent Peaceforce in the U.S. So I will start out by just acknowledging that I've been thinking a lot about peace lately. As we're seeing an increase in state violence at home and war abroad, I just won't let myself stop imagining peace and real peace. The day before I started as head of mission for the U.S. for Nonviolent Peace Force, our executive director gave me a call to tell me that we had lost a significant amount of funding. We had lost our Department of Justice grants that were supporting our work in San Diego and Minneapolis. And then ultimately, the loss of that amount of funding led to us at the end of last year having to make the decision to sunset our work in North Minneapolis. Still, the day before you start your job, that's not the best kind of phone call to get. And yet, I still was very focused on nonviolence and peace because I understood that more than ever, the work of Nonviolent Peace Force was needed to meet the moment. Not simply reacting to violence, but proactively seeking to prevent it, to reimagine safety, keeping each other safe without weapons, without arms, protecting each other, and keeping our eye on long-term peace. Talking to you today, I think about the retired worker who was a community volunteer that I met while I was in Minneapolis in January. We were on community patrol together, and we were protecting her immigrant neighbors. She told me, I never expected to keep a gas mask in my car. And I never thought that I would have to fear my own government, that my own government could cause me harm. I think about the undocumented person that I met in California, who, when I asked the question, what would safety look like for you? They said, it means being able to pull up my blinds and feel safe in my own home. I think about my Harlem neighbors who usually stroll our blocks during Ramadan and Eid in beautiful, beautiful attire, and particularly in celebration of Eid. This year, there are fewer families walking my blocks. With the fear of potentially being detained or harassed, and just not and feeling that missing neighborliness that we normally have in our tight-knit community this time of year. These are our communities not feeling safe. These are our communities feeling like the ideal of peace is not anywhere in the atmosphere. So what is NP's response to this? Well, we've built a new 5-year strategy. We're 5 years in the U.S., and we're looking 5 years out now. And and I will say in very capital letters, that new strategy is about peace. Yes, keeping communities safe in real time and in the reality of the violence around us, both state violence and non-state violence, and the insecurity that brings about. But while also continuing to build the pillars toward peace. Pillar number 1 in that strategy is increasing safety and protection for the most vulnerable from state and non-state violence. We know when we increase safety and protection for those most vulnerable, those most pushed to the margins, those most likely to be targeted, then we are doing that for all. We're doing that for everyone. Our second pillar is strengthening and expanding the field of unarmed civilian protection, the care, the skills building, the coordination and networking of field practitioners, the people that Ethan talked to you about, our own team members who are doing that work on the daily and keeping communities safe, who are doing that work on the ground and making sure that they're connected and that they're cared for and that we're able to mobilize and activate a base of practitioners going forward, while at the same time stepping into a role for Nonviolent Peace Force among other organizations who are working at the national and regional level, who are themselves focused on nonviolent strategies, who are themselves focused on nonviolent direct action, and identifying a path forward for us as a convener and strengthening the field and practice of UCP across nonviolent organizations in the U.S. And then our third pillar is the bold new pillar of decreasing polarization in civic space. Leveraging Nonviolent Peace Force's principle and commitment to nonpartisanship by engaging and connecting actors across the fault lines. And we all know that there are the fault lines that we see every day, whether it's in our streets, in our neighborhoods, in on social media when we're all kind of throwing up our arms. How can somebody believe so differently from me about caring for all of us? But stepping across those fault lines, um, in a fractured country, in a fractured public discourse, and finding ways to lean into the uncomfortable and leverage our commitment to nonpartisanship. At NP U.S, we are ready for this moment. We are built for this moment. To quote the late Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and I'll end with Ruth's wise words: fight for the things you care about, but do it in a way that will lead others to join you.
Thank you so much, Raz. I'm really grateful for those words and for holding that big vision at this moment, that we can still hold that big vision, right? I think one thing I heard from Olive, from Jules, from Ethan, from Raz is that it can feel really overwhelming, this moment, right? But there are things that we can do. There are tactical, everyday things we can do. There is big vision we can still have. And together in this community, we're able to make that possible, continue to make peace possible. So I'm going to open up for some questions. Please feel free to put them in the chat and I'll be watching that. Anne had a question about how to access training. So maybe I can turn that over to Roz to talk about a little bit. I know we have lots of training resources on our website, which I'm happy to share after this in the follow-up email, but I think Roz can talk a little bit into how we're kind of moving into that national way of working and providing support, making that kind of support accessible.
Thanks, Anna. I actually am going to, and hopefully not be putting you on the spot, Jules, but to turn that question to Jules, who has played a leadership role and is stepping more into a leadership role around coordinating our training resources.
Yes, happy to take on that question. Yeah, so there's two ways to go about it. There's one, Anna shared that we have a lot of training resources on our website. Happy to share those out. Those are always really great to have on hand because they're online and virtual. The second way is that you could reach out to us. I can drop my email in the chat and feel free to, share a little bit, about yourself or the organization you're working with and what you're looking for in the training. And that really kind of gets the ball rolling. We'll reach out to have a conversation and learn more about, your work and what you're looking for in terms of training. Yeah.
Great. Thank you.
I'll just also quickly add for MP Global that we have our global team has been building out an academy, Unarmed Civilian Protection Academy. It's still rolling out, but there are resources available through Nonviolent Peace Force Global as well.
Yeah, good plug for the UCP Academy. And we will definitely, yes, the Ethan just put the link in the chat. Thank you, Ethan. It's teamwork right here. And that is going kind of fully live soon. It's a bit in beta mode now, but it will be fully accessible to folks soon. And we'll definitely be sharing emails out about that. I wanted to put a question to both Jules and Ethan. I think, knowing many of you on this call and having had many conversations with you all, I know that in your each respective places, you are doing work that is the work you have to offer in this moment of keeping your neighbors safe. And one thing that has come up a lot in my conversations with you all is sort of how to keep going, right? Like, how do I personally navigate this? And so I'm wondering if Jules, and then I'll turn it over to Ethan, if you could just speak a little bit as to how you've personally navigated this moment, how you continue to sustain your work in keeping people safe when the risks and the threats are so much higher. And yeah, how you continue in this moment, and perhaps you'll have some kernels of wisdom for the rest of us.
That is a great question. I feel like I always ask this to other people, but rarely reflect for myself. Yeah, I mean this work, as many of us know, is deeply personal, right? I'm sure many of us are immigrants or are children of immigrants or related to immigrants. So this work is deeply personal, and I am lucky to be able to do this work with Nonviolent Peaceforce. But I also do this work outside in my own personal life without my NP hat on, per se. And what that looks like is really honestly just getting involved in my neighborhood. This current moment really kind of unfortunately, was an opportunity for me to really get plugged in to literally the people who live on the same street as me, people who live across the street from me, people who are running the businesses on the corner stores and on the main streets. And that has honestly also helped with sustaining me in this moment. To really see like, oh, I'm not the only one who feels this way, or I'm not the only one who wants to help my fellow neighbors who do need help. In my own neighborhood, I'm based in a neighborhood in Brooklyn, in New York City. ICE has been relentless in my neighborhood. They have been going after delivery drivers. They have been going after families. Um, we have been able to find out that, people are being taken around the hours of 6 a.m. and 9 a.m. And from that, my neighborhood has kind of coordinated a way to, set up patrols, canvass businesses. And yeah, it's deeply personal. It's work that it's hard to do without literally getting on the ground and meeting people, and kind of embracing that kind of vulnerability. Yeah, so I think being able to, do this work with others has been a lifeline, honestly, in doing this work, because you can't do this work alone. It's really something you have to do in collaboration with the people around you.
Thanks so much, Jules. I'll pass it over to Ethan now.
Yeah, thank you, Jules. It's a good reminder to stay connected and text my friends. But this is a question that I ask myself a lot. And the thing that always pops up first for me is once I was in a meeting with some Dakota organizers in the Midwest, and we were talking about how rough this situation is. And one of the organizers, one of the more like experienced organizers, was like, "Hey, like we're post-apocalyptic. Our apocalypse happened, in 1492 and beyond, and right now we're part of a long struggle that is about making sure that our people survive." And that really affected me. Because I think when I start to feel burnt out, sometimes I realize that feeling comes from a sense of entitlement, to have to have peace. And of course I want that. And, I am one of a long generational line of people who have struggled and survived. And I owe my life and what I have and what I know to them. And in that way, I'm just trying to earn my way for my, to give that to my descendants. And so, and to everyone else. And so I think I was talking to a friend about this the other day. I think the burnout for me comes from not necessarily from being tired, but when I start to feel misaligned, when I start to have like a savior mentality, or when I start to feel like I'm owed something more. And, I think human rights are fundamental and inextricable. And also, I think that there's a whole lot of people struggling. And I think in a way that makes me feel connected. Makes me feel like when I'm on the ground at the courthouse and I'm meeting somebody for the first time, I don't feel like they're a stranger. I feel like they're, you know, they're a reflection of myself. And so that helps me tremendously. And of course, I don't mind going to the zoo every now and then. San Diego has one of the best zoos in the world. And we also have the ocean and the mountains. And I love to hike and be in nature. Um, it's take it. I think life happens in those in between moments. And it's also in those moments where it's extra special to like realize that you are connected to a greater collective. And so, yeah, highly recommend getting the pocket guide or the pocket books by Thich Nhat Hanh. So convenient to have in your back pocket. Pull that thing out whenever you're feeling terrible, and it'll be like, hey, just go look at an orange for a while and try to imagine the tree that it came from. It's pretty helpful.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much. I saw Michael put in the chat about meditation too as being useful. And if you haven't seen some of Michael and broader community's work, you can go to Meta Center online and find some really great resources there too. Okay, I see one more question that I'll wrap it up with. And I'm going to send this one to Jules. Giannis, if I'm getting your name right, in the chat, is talking about how they're from a country that has a lot of army and civil violence, and would like to learn more on how someone without a gun can feel secure in this kind of setting. And I'm sure our setting is not the same, but it did make me think about, Jules, I know you've been in with community organizations in trainings, providing support, listening to people who feel really unsafe. And I wonder how you approach that conversation, or how you help people think about, we are from a community where we think weapons equal safety. And so, what that looks like in starting that conversation with someone who might think that a weapon is actually what they need and not de-escalation tactics. So maybe if you could just talk a little bit about what that conversation looks like and how we help people feel rooted in nonviolence as effective.
Yes, that's a great question. I also welcome, Ethan and Roz to jump in if they'd like as well. I think for me that conversation sometimes starts, at least for me, wanting to come from a place of like understanding, right? And understanding where this person is coming from, and again, the context they live, because I'm sure the context they live and the context I live in is probably different. So I usually start with a question of like, what does safety mean to you? And that is that is a question has so many different answers. Sometimes people answer with, something that's physical. Sometimes they answer with something that is emotional, spiritual even. And I feel like that is a really great starting off point, right? To say, what does safety mean to you? What does it feel like for you? What does it look like, right? Um, yeah, it's a difficult answer, but I think that is a pretty solid starting point. Yeah.
Yeah, I would I don't have anything to add. I was just noticing that Michael, that you have your hand up. And I know that this is a question that you also have a pretty good answer to. So wondering if we can unmic you to share.
Yes, for sure. Michael, are you able to unmute yourself? I
I
messaged.
think so. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, go for it.
This question, which burns in the heart of every one of us, for ourselves and our neighbors, reminded me of an anecdote connected with the life of Peace Pilgrim. If you remember her, she was a New Jersey lady who decided to walk across the United States all by herself, and that's exactly what she did. She ate when she was given food, slept where she was given shelter, and had amazing adventures. There's a whole community of fans of hers that have gotten together and written this up. So the point is this, that as she was starting out, naturally, she felt afraid, and she went to a friend of hers who was a police captain and said, "Should I carry a gun to protect myself?" And he said, and this is a policeman speaking. He said, "That is absolutely the worst thing that you can do." Because he didn't elaborate. But first of all, it would put you in a frame of mind that would actually attract violence. And second of all, as we've been saying here recently, it would close you off from your inner protective capacities, which are really quite considerable. So there's story after story of what is called in the field the victim precipitated homicides, where people have pulled out a gun to protect themselves and immediately gotten killed. So this is a big step forward in human evolution that we're talking about here, learning what our inner capacity is and our interconnectedness and how to mobilize it for the ultimate safety and advance. So glad to be on this call with all of you. It's immensely encouraging.
Thank you, Michael. Thank you so much. We're grateful for your wisdom. So as we wrap it up, I want to share with you a little bit about a special campaign we want to invite you to be a part of. So as you heard, the demand for unarmed civilian protection is growing faster than our capacity to deliver it. So to strengthen and expand this work, Nonviolent Peaceforce is raising $1.1 million to fully fund our U.S. program in 2026. So you've secured about half of that, $550,000, and we're seeking the other half. And this is to ensure the things that you heard today: expanding immigration enforcement response capacity, scaling protest and election safety training, deepening partnerships in high threat regions, and sustaining trained civilian protection staff embedded in communities, and really working for that bigger vision of those three pillars that Roz talked to you about. So this is a defining period for community safety and democratic participation in the United States. And your investment and support has always ensured and will continue to ensure that when communities face enforcement, intimidation, or unrest, they're ready to respond with effective unarmed civilian protection strategies. So if you can, we invite you to think about if you can help us close the remaining $550,000 gap and fully fund this essential work. We can strengthen civilian protection nationwide and ensure that even in a time of democratic strain, safety remains possible. So we're going to follow up with information in email after this with more information about that campaign, and you can consider joining us. So thank you all for taking a bit of your time to learn how you're helping to make peace possible, even under some of the most challenging circumstances. We'll also put a link in the chat, I think, and if not, in the email with a survey to follow up and share your thoughts. We'll also include in the email the recording of this event, the link to information about the campaign, and the link to share your feedback. So I'm always here to connect if you have further thoughts or ideas. I love talking to all of you. So thank you again for making the time, for being with us and preparing and not panicking. And thank you for all your good work in your communities and your support of Nonviolent Peaceforce. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you. Thank you,
everyone.
Anna. Thank you for facilitating us.
Bye, everyone.